Okay, sorry about that. Let's go. Let's continue. Um, what I'm showing you now, and I'm going to make it bigger in a minute. Some of you are familiar, of course, with when you have Chumash, you have what's called Targum, you have Unkelis, which is Targum, the translation into Aramaic. Unkelis not only translates into Aramaic, but he also inserts words that have meaning beyond the text. And very often Rashi will quote him and say, Ke Targumo, as he has translated, meaning how Unkelis intuited certain ideas of a pasuk. That's how Rashi says that's what it should be. Now, there is Targum Yonatan ben Uziel, another Aramaic translation to a lot of Tanakh. But in addition to that, when it comes to Megillat Esther, there's something else called Targum Sheni. There's a very large, or I should say broad, range of ideas as to when it was written, by whom it was written. It seems to be around the 5th, 6th century, but there's no 100% on that. But what it does is more than just translate the words, it actually does use um, it almost acts like a midrash, because what it does is it takes a pasuk, and it doesn't translate every single pasuk in Megillat Esther. I think it only translated 76 psukim in the entire Megillah. But what it does do is take some of those psukim and um, adds a lot of information that we wouldn't know. Okay, now the pasuk I mentioned was Balayla hahu nadada shenat hamelach. So this particular section of the Targum Sheni, you'll see every blue dot is another Bei Balayla, meaning on that night. And a lot of things, evidently, according to the Targum Sheni, happened on the exact same night as this happened. Not the same time, but on this particular night, that the same night, I'll make up a date, like for example, the 13th day of Elul. So it happened, these happened. So let's take a look. I'll read a few just and read and translate. Bebelela metul di b'chol zimna di prakyaton min bale de bavehon belelia prikyaton mi paro mi sancheriv min kol de kamu alehon. On this night, God saved the Jewish people, both from Paro and from Sancheriv. This is one of the reasons I wanted to show you this, which would mean, it seems, that the same night that the Jews were saved from Paro, they were also saved from Sancheriv. Bebelela ahu nadat shinta de malka, bebelela ahu nafak purkana lihudai. On that night, the king could not sleep. On that night, the Jews were saved. Bebelela idabrat Sarah levete de Avimelech. It's also the same night that that Sarah Imenu was at the house of Avimelech. Bebelela itkatalu kol buche de Mitzray. So that same night was also the night that the Egyptian, the firstborn Mitzrim, died. Bebelela ahu itgalian nevuan lenevin vechelman lechelma chazaya. Belela ahu itragish alma. On that night, the entire world shook. Medinan v'chodayareon evla rabba v'chol krachya mispeda. That it was, the whole world shook. Everyone was in a form of panic, of evel, vilala, and crying out. B'chomedinata uleman, asirin, etc. Down here. On that night, and this is the most strange of this entire list, God could not sleep. V'in laktiv haden kra. If it weren't for the following pasuk, lo havat efsha lememra. We couldn't have ever said something like that. Dichtiv ura lama tishan Hashem. Wake up! Why are you sleeping, God? Now, chas v'shalom let kadmo yeshena. God forbid to say that God does, it needs sleep. Kadchatyan beit Yisrael avad garmei dichvat damich. Okay, and this particular section goes on. I'm not going to get into it because it's a little bit out there. I want to, but just is also not to be undone. But Beba Leila Hu Nadat Shinte de Mordechai Tzadika. Not only could the king not sleep, but Mordechai himself couldn't sleep. Beba Leila Nadat Shinta de Haman Risha. Also, Haman couldn't sleep for various reasons. Beba Leila Hu Nadat Shinte de Malka de Achashverosh Tipsha. That night, this is where the actual translation of the pasuk begins. That Achashverosh, the fool, could not sleep, etc., 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 etc. Why am I showing you this? For the main reason that the very, very first thing in this particular Targum Sheni about Balaylahu, which is the night that everything turned around for the Jewish people in the time of Mitzrayim, is the same night that everything turned around for the Jewish people at this point, the Sancheriv. Why is this significant? And the answer is Tisha B'Av. Some of you right away will understand what I mean. We know that when the Meraglim, the so-called spies, came back from the land of Israel, it says that all of Am Yisrael cried. Hashem said, as some of you know, Atem bechitem bechiyah shel chinam. You cried for no reason. Ani kovei lachem bechiyah ledorot. I will establish for you an eternal night of crying. And that night was Tisha B'Av. It was, as the Midrash in many places refers to it, as a day or a night that is misugal for Puranut. It is like, that's it. It's just it's bad karma. It's a bad night. Things happen. Time, for those of you who are in the Kuzari class, which is something we're talking about right now, time also is something that we deal with in a metaphysical, in a spiritual time terminology as well. That even though Hashem is above time, we are not. We are bound by time. So that Hashem uses particular points in time to do things for us, positive and unfortunately not so good. Tisha B'Av became, as a result of that night, in perpetuity until Mashiach comes, tomorrow around 3 o'clock, Bezrat Hashem, that is a bad time. But the night of Pesach, the night of Yetziat Mitzrayim, this whole time period was a petach, was an opening for all kinds of good things to happen to Am Yisrael. It's all about Geula. That's why also the Hasidim referred to Pesach as Chag HaGeula. The night of Pesach, the Seder, is referred to as Leil HaEmunah, Leil HaGeula. There's so many things that you can tie into this. But that's where this one little pasuk with 2 words, Balaylahu, in our parak, is ending now. We see that it's a much broader connection to Jewish history than just that moment where Sancheriv and his people find their end. Okay, Bezrat Hashem, next week we will begin Parak Kaf. Just as a little background, it is Chizkiyahu seems like he's dying. Things turn around. We'll have to see why they turn around, what happens as a result of him living longer, and then his eventual demise. I will be in touch, hopefully this week or next, with Barnea Salavan, as I mentioned, to have him speak to us after we finish that section. Some points that he will be able to make that I could live to be 1,000 years old, and I'd still never know what he knows, and I would like to invite him to come to speak to our group. Okay, in the meantime, have a Laila Tov and a Shavua Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
שבוע טוב, תודה.